Thank you. Do you know, I want to tell you, is this coincidence or what? The last play I did last year was at the George Street Playhouse, which then went to Ford's Theater in D.C.
And so every day you came out on the stage and you looked at the presidential box.
I did.
Wow. And you may have been the last voice the president heard on April 14th.
Yeah, right.
10:15 p.m.
Not quite, but John and Claire, look at this. We have a wonderful playbill from Ford's Theater. This is the actual playbill, Frank?
Yes, and these were the playbills that were printed for the very day of the play on April 14, 1865, Our American Cousin, starring Laura Keene. In fact, at the bottom you see Patriotic Song and Chorus, Honor to Our Soldiers, was a brand new piece that the composer was going to play for the president at the end of the play, and of course the president never got to hear it.
And like we said before, it was April 14th when he was shot, which was Good Friday, and he was warned not to go that day.
Yes,
Why is that?
because it was Good Friday, and they thought it would be bad PR for the President of the United States to go to the theater on Good Friday.
Wow.
Now, what is this? This looks like a piece of concrete to
Well,
me.
it is a mini ball, which is the ammunition that was used in Civil War rifles. Of course, that's the way it looks after impact on a rock or a tree. Imagine getting hit by something like that.
So John Wilkes Booth would have used a bullet very much like this to assassinate the president.
A little smaller because he used a single round Derringer.
Oh, okay. Now, what is this picture here?
This is an actual photograph by Alexander Gardner, one of the great Civil War photographers, of the hanging of the conspirators that were involved in the conspiracy to assassinate Lincoln.
Were they all men?
No, there was one woman, the first woman executed by the federal government. You see how they wrapped her skirts so that she could fall through the trap after it was sprung.
Oh, my
Wow,
gosh.
that is incredible. How long after the assassination were they captured?
They were arrested within days and executed after a quick military trial in July.
Now, this is a pretty book right here. Tell me
That's a
about this.
carte de visite album. Every Victorian American home had them, and usually they had pictures of famous or infamous people at the beginning of the album and then family members following.
Oh, interesting.
And what you're looking at is an actual photograph, which is the next step with the trap sprung of the conspirators that we just looked at.
So they've been hung
So
here.
they have been hung.
Wow.
And
And
of
who
course,
is this infamous
the
man?
infamous man is John Wilkes Booth, who was the person who pulled the trigger to kill President Lincoln.
Now, what I found interesting is that John Wilkes Booth was actually an actor himself.
Yes, and he had played at Ford's Theater many times,
really?
so he knew the layout. And when he stalked the president, he was able to do his dastardly deed with some ease because of that.
Now, Lincoln, of course, not only being president, was a performer himself. I mean, he had the Lincoln-Douglas debates.
Right, and you're looking at a first printing of the Lincoln-Douglas debates, a presentation copy by Lincoln.
Wow.
Because he was very proud of his performance in 1858 against Senator Stephen Douglas, his political nemesis. And we did have stenographers then, and they took down verbatim what each of the candidates said. Lincoln had that bound and printed in 1860.
And he would sign individual
And
copies.
he would sign individual copies as keepsakes.
Now, this is an interesting sign. I mean, looking at it already, I can see that there's an error. What's the story behind
Lincoln, even though he was the Republican nominee for president in 1860, many people didn't know him. And they misspelled his first name, Abram, instead of Abraham.
Wow.
And this is a campaign flag promoting his candidacy with Hannibal Hamlin, his first vice president.
Again, that wasn't meant to be a collectible. It was meant to just be thrown away.
Exactly, just as the playbill for Ford's Theater.
Now, what's the significance of this picture?
This is an official nomination, as informal as it may look, written by the president on August 19, 1861, from the Executive Mansion, which is what the White House was called then. And here Lincoln nominates for general George Thomas, who became the Rock of Chickamauga, but more interestingly, James Shields, who once challenged Lincoln to a duel in Springfield because Lincoln had libeled him in some political commentary.
Wow.
Now here's the president forgetting the past competition and still being able to nominate shields to a generalship.
You know, what I find interesting is that there's no raised shield. There's nothing to say that it's an official document from Abraham Lincoln.
That's right, except his signature, which was accepted by the War Department at the time.
And he always signed, yours truly.
Yours truly, A. Lincoln.
Well, there you have it, a wonderful collection. Claire and John, we're going to see many more pieces of Frank Williams, our super collectors, part of his Abraham Lincoln collection, coming up next.
Gosh, that is just incredible. And I wanted to ask you, Frank, did he predict his own death, Abraham Lincoln?
Yes, he had dreams about it that were troublesome to him and his wife, Mary, who was very protective, especially having lost a son in the White House. But he had a dream that he went down and saw himself laid out on a catafalque in the East Room, which only proved to be too true.
Boy, that is just terrific stuff. Thank you very much for showing us this, and we look forward to checking in with you guys a little bit later on.
We're looking forward to it.
Boy, that is great. On some Abraham Lincoln collectibles out in Providence, Rhode Island with Io. Io, great stuff out there.
Yeah, I want to thank our judge, newly appointed.
Right.
And you patterned your life after him.
Right.
And we're going to look at more of your collection. Now, this is a oil painting?
It's a miniature on ivory, oil painting by an artist called William Patterson. It was done in the 1920s, based on an 1860 photograph of the beardless Lincoln.
Now, it actually looks much more friendly.
And a handsome Lincoln at that, isn't that so?
Never seems to smile.
And at one time, miniatures on ivories were very collectible, and you don't see them much these days, but many people collected them in at least the beginning of this century.
Now, this is an interesting piece.
This is a piece of sandwich glass, pressed glass, made in Sandwich, Massachusetts. After Lincoln's assassination, it's called Funeral Drape in honor of his death. And you see the drapery and then the tassel. The first edition of this glass, and they did compote and punch bowls, and had no tassel. The tassel was added later.
Okay, so it's more of a collectible.
More of a collectible, exactly.
And now this is very nice. A baccarat
That's a baccarat paperweight of crystal, and you see that beautiful blue background, and baccarat did it in many different colors. We own this one with that beautiful blue.
Right, and the sunburst in the background there. Now, this is interesting because it's a photograph of Abraham Lincoln only about 10 years after the whole process had started.
Yes, in 1858, you see that Lincoln had an ego and a vanity because he had some made. This is the beardless Lincoln, and signed them. This is an original signature, yours truly, A. Lincoln, because he would give them out as presents to friends and clients and fellow political people that he worked with.
Now, to show how lovable he was, they even made Abraham Lincoln milkshake syrup. I mean, they have everything. We're going to look at this little piece of, what did you call it, a whirligig?
This is a whirligig, a piece of folk art that you'd normally see in the front yard with the wind moving the hands. It's a bit of whimsy. You can see how Lincoln has been taken and transformed into folk art, just as you see with the nutcracker and the fan.
Well, I want to show you the fan. I showed it to you in the bumper, but look, what I didn't show you was that they have the women leaders of Europe on one side here, and on the other side, we have the Civil War leaders from that time. I mean, it's just gorgeous. It's a very rare piece, so I will put it down very gently. And now we have what you were talking about, the folk art of the nutcracker.
This is another folk art with Lincoln as a nutcracker.
And this you received as a speaker, as a gift from...
my friend George Latour made this for me. It's a replica of the Lincoln birth cabin that he gave me after I delivered a Lincoln speech at the Asbury Methodist Church in Warwick, Rhode Island.
Well, see, just like Lincoln, you're a speaker also, making your rounds?
I make the rounds on the circuit. I do.
And you're part of a society that honors Lincoln also.
Right, the Abraham Lincoln Association, which I led for 8 years, and the Lincoln Group of Boston, which is a local group here in New England.
Well, thank you so much for letting us see your collection on this
for being here.
Memorable day. There you have it, Claire and John.
Just terrific stuff. And Judge Williams, I just wanted to ask you, what do you think of the coincidence between John F.